I will never forget the day I met Jacobo Grinberg. At first glance, everything about him seemed normal. A kind man, calm in appearance, someone who seemed simply obsessed with understanding the workings of the human mind. But soon, I realized there was much more beneath that surface calm. Something that only revealed itself when it was already too late. Imagine meeting someone whose knowledge could alter reality itself. If you knew this was possible, would you seek it? Jacobo did, and it was the last thing he did before disappearing without a trace. But was it really his search for knowledge that led to his disappearance? Or was it something much darker, hidden in plain sight? People have talked about conspiracies, mysterious disappearances, secret societies. But the truth? It began long before all that. When Jacobo was just a young student, obsessed with a simple yet profound question. What is the human mind? Really? He was relentless, always questioning everything, always looking beyond the surface of things. This obsession consumed him, but I was there. I saw it with my own eyes, and what we discovered together would change everything I thought I knew. It changed my life forever. Back then, I was a researcher too, and we shared the same curiosity for the unknown. Jacobo was different though. He wasn't content with theories or books. He wanted something more, proof, something tangible. He believed the human mind held powers that could reshape reality itself. It wasn't just a thought experiment for him, it was real. He believed it with a conviction that scared me at times. In his early years as a student, he would often ask, what if our minds can alter the physical world? What if thoughts aren't just abstract things, but forces that can shape everything around us? I remember laughing at first. It seemed impossible, but Jacobo never laughed. He would just stare, deep in thought, with this intensity that made you question everything you thought you knew. He was always pushing boundaries, testing the limits of what we understood about the mind. The further we went into his research, the stranger things became. He started experimenting with people's perceptions, claiming that reality itself could bend under the right conditions. He believed that ancient cultures had tapped into these abilities that modern science had long forgotten. I admit, at first I thought he had gone too far. But then, something happened. We began to see things that shouldn't be possible. Objects that moved without being touched. People who could seemingly predict things they had no way of knowing. And that's when I realized Jacobo was right about one thing. The mind holds power far beyond our understanding. It was around this time that things took a dark turn. Jacobo became secretive. He didn't share his research with many anymore, only a select few. He was convinced that what he had discovered could be dangerous in the wrong hands. And then, he started talking about people watching him. He said there were forces, people trying to stop him from revealing the truth. At first, I thought it was paranoia, but the strange things kept happening. Files would go missing from his office. People he had worked with started distancing themselves. And then, one day, Jacobo Grinberg disappeared. Just like that. No trace. No explanation. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. I'll never forget the moment I realized something was terribly wrong. We had a meeting scheduled. Jacobo never missed appointments. But that day, he didn't show up. I went to his office. Everything was there, his books, his notes, even his coat hung neatly by the door. But Jacobo was gone. The police came, of course, but they found nothing. To this day, there's no official record of what happened to him. Only speculation. Some say he uncovered something too dangerous. Others say he was taken, silenced by forces that didn't want the world to know the truth. But the question remains, what was it that Jacobo found? What did he uncover in the human mind that made him such a threat? Could it be that he discovered something that the rest of us are simply not ready to understand? What if the power of our thoughts, our minds, can truly shape the world around us? What if Jacobo was right? And what if he's still out there, somewhere, living with the knowledge that can alter everything we know? I will never forget the first time I witnessed Pachita's work. I knew I was about to see something extraordinary, but even in my wildest dreams, I could never have predicted what I saw. Jacobo had spoken about her as a powerful healer, someone who defied science itself, and although I trusted his judgment, part of me remained skeptical. until I saw it with my own eyes. When we entered Pachita's modest home, the atmosphere felt dense, almost electric. The small room, dimly lit by candles, was filled with an air of reverence, as if stepping into a sacred temple. Jacobo's face was calm but focused, his eyes betraying a deep curiosity. I could sense that, to him, this was not just another experiment. It was something far more personal. Pachita, a small, elderly woman with intense, piercing eyes, greeted us with a simple nod. There was nothing extraordinary in her appearance, nothing that would suggest the incredible power she supposedly wielded. Yet, as soon as she began preparing for the ritual, the energy in the room shifted. It felt as though the very air around us had become charged with something beyond the physical. The patient, a young man suffering from a severe illness, was brought into the room and laid on the table. His pale, weak body contrasted sharply with the vibrant energy radiating from Pachita. She began to speak softly, in a language that I couldn't understand, invoking forces that seemed to transcend the boundaries of reality itself. Jacobo watched intently, his eyes fixed on every movement she made, every word she whispered. And then, the impossible happened. Pachita took a knife, an old, dull blade that looked more like a relic than a surgical tool, and made a swift incision in the young man's abdomen. I gasped, expecting to see blood pour out, but there was none. Instead, what I saw defied all logic. She reached into the incision, her hand disappearing deep into his body, and after a few moments, she pulled out what looked like a tumor, an object that had no business being in her hand, let alone in the patient's body. There was no blood, no sign of pain on the patient's face, nothing that indicated he had just been through an invasive procedure. It was as if reality itself had bent around Pachita's hands, allowing her to perform this miraculous act without the normal consequences of surgery. Jacobo's expression was one of awe mixed with confusion. He had seen many things in his research, things that challenged the boundaries of science, but this was something entirely different. He leaned in closer, almost as if trying to discern whether what he was seeing was real or just an illusion crafted by the mysterious healer before us. The ritual continued, with Pachita performing what can only be described as a spiritual surgery. It was unlike anything I had ever imagined. Her movements were methodical yet graceful, as though she was tapping into a force far beyond our understanding. The more I watched, the more I realized that what was happening here was not just about healing. It was about altering the very fabric of existence. And Jacobo was captivated. I could see the wheels turning in his mind, processing the event not just as a scientist but as a man who had spent his life searching for the truth behind the mysteries of the human mind. He wasn't just witnessing a miracle. He was witnessing a challenge to everything he knew, everything he believed. When the ritual ended, the young man sat up, weak but clearly relieved. He smiled at Pachita, gratitude shining in his eyes. The illness that had plagued him for years seemed to have vanished, as though it had been plucked from his body by some unseen force. Jacobo approached him, his eyes filled with questions, but the young man had no answers, only gratitude. That night, as we left Pachita's home, Jacobo was unusually quiet. His mind was clearly racing, trying to make sense of what he had just witnessed. "What did you think?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Jacobo didn't look at me. His eyes were fixed on the stars above us. "I don't know," he whispered, "but I need to know more." From that moment on, Jacobo's obsession with Pachita grew. He spent weeks, months even, studying her methods, trying to understand the forces at play in her healing practices. He delved deeper into his research, blending science with mysticism in a way that few had dared to do before him. But the more he uncovered, the more dangerous his journey became. Because what Jacobo was searching for, it wasn't just the secret to healing. It was the key to unlocking the deepest mysteries of the universe, to bending reality itself. And as his obsession grew, so did the forces that sought to stop him. Jacobo could no longer ignore what he had witnessed. Standing in the corner of Pachita's dimly lit room, watching as she performed yet another surgery without any medical equipment, Jacobo's mind raced. The room was filled with a thick, almost palpable energy that seemed to defy everything he knew about science and reality. But it was real. Right in front of him, Pachita's hands moved in ways that no surgeon could replicate, healing in ways that no medical textbook could explain. Jacobo's disbelief grew, but so did his awe. It was as if he had stepped into a different dimension, one where the boundaries of what was real and what was possible had completely dissolved. He had come to Pachita with the intention of studying her, to rationalize her methods with science, but now he was starting to question everything. Was science even capable of explaining what he was seeing? Or had he stumbled upon something far beyond the limits of human understanding? What if reality, as we know it, was nothing more than an illusion that could be bent, shaped, and even broken by those who understood its true nature? It was during one of these sessions, hidden in the shadows, that Jacobo saw something he could never unsee. Pachita was not simply healing. She was manipulating reality itself. The air around her seemed to shift, as if the fabric of space and time was being twisted by her very will. And for a brief moment, Jacobo felt it too, like the walls between this world and another had thinned, allowing something else to seep through. He felt his heart race as he realized that Pachita's abilities might not just be about healing. They could be opening doors to places humanity was never meant to reach. The air in the room grew colder, and Jacobo couldn't shake the feeling that they were no longer alone. The thought struck him like lightning. What if Pachita wasn't just healing people? What if she was channeling something far more ancient and powerful? Something that didn't belong in this world? As the weeks went by, Jacobo's fear began to outweigh his curiosity. He started to feel a growing sense of unease, as though his studies had brought him too close to a truth that should have remained hidden. He tried to distance himself, but it was too late. The truth had already begun to unravel before his eyes. One night, Jacobo had a vivid dream. He was walking down a long, dark hallway, similar to the ones he had navigated at Pachita's home, but this one felt endless. With every step, the shadows seemed to grow thicker, and he could hear whispers, as if the very walls were speaking to him. He couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. A warning. Suddenly, he reached a door at the end of the hallway. It was ancient, covered in strange symbols that pulsed with a faint, eerie light. Something told him not to open it, but he was compelled. Slowly, Jacobo reached for the handle. As his hand made contact, a sudden, overwhelming fear surged through him, like the cold grip of death itself. He awoke in a cold sweat, gasping for breath. The dream shook him to his core. What was behind that door? And more importantly, why was he being drawn to it? Over the following days, Jacobo became increasingly paranoid. He felt as though he was being watched, as if unseen eyes were following his every move. Was it Pachita's doing? Or had his studies into the nature of reality somehow opened a door to something he couldn't control? One afternoon, Jacobo decided to confront Pachita about his growing fears. He asked her about the strange energy he had felt, about the whispers and the dreams that haunted him. Pachita's response was cryptic. There are things in this world that cannot be explained. Jacobo, you have seen a glimpse of them, but be careful. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. The words sent a chill down Jacobo's spine. He had always believed in the power of the human mind, in the ability of science to explain the mysteries of the universe. But now, standing on the edge of an abyss he could barely comprehend, he wasn't so sure. The last time anyone saw Jacobo, he seemed different, distracted, distant, as if his mind was somewhere else entirely. He was never seen again after that day. Some say he disappeared into another dimension, a casualty of his own curiosity. Others believe that he was silenced by forces who didn't want his discoveries to come to light. But the truth remains a mystery, just like Jacobo Grinberg himself. Could it be that Jacobo Grinberg had found the key to unlocking the mysteries of the universe? And if so, what did he uncover in those final days that led to his disappearance? The answer may never be known, but perhaps some things are better left unsolved. Thank you for watching. If you've ever wondered about the hidden truths of the world, stay with us, because this is only the beginning,